Okay, Max, so carrying on with your evaluation, mate. We've got Robert Rock on the right, you on the left. A few things that we're picking up in the setup, right? So um, the first thing for me would be, let's go from the ground up, right? So the first thing for me would be your feet are pointing straight a bit too much, right? So if we just look at Rocky's, whoops. If we look at Rocky's feet, you can see how from his heels to his toes, definitely pointed out a bit, right? Yours are kind of just a little, even though the toes might be out a little bit, maybe 5 degrees. I'd say his are out maybe 15-20 degrees, right? And this is going to have a big sort of this is going to play a big part into how you're able to move as well, right? So obviously you want your toes turned out so that number one, you're able to straighten your leg and straighten your back leg and flex your forward leg, right? And also so you're able to turn, right? By turning this toe out a bit, your right toe, you're going to be able to turn a bit more. Then turning your left toe out, you're going to be able to turn a bit easier that way. Okay. And then going up from there, the next thing would be grip, right? If we zoom in on Rocky's grip, and I draw a little line from his right thumb and forefinger, and that's going to go up and that's going to point to the right of his chin, right? Draw a line from your thumb and forefinger, yours, he's pointing to your left shoulder, right? So we need to wrap your right hand over a little bit away from the target so that it's pointing up here towards your, just to get it more neutral, right? Just to get it a bit more neutral, just so things don't pop up in the swing when you're actually moving. All right. So they're the few things that I would change. Just looking at it from this position, right? So yeah, the trouble with this one, which I pointed out with the videos I've made of Rocky, the camera's moving. Right, so if we put a little line there, put another one there, another one there, right, then move. Right, that's a little bit better. Right, so you can see how his hips have stayed between the lines. Right, that it looks like the right hips moved outside that red line, but if you look at the camera up here in the corner, the camera's moving as well. You see how the camera's moving? So that tells me just someone's holding it. It's not stable, right? And these are the little things you've got to really look for if you're going to analyze a swing properly, right? If the camera is on a tripod and it's not moving, his hips have stayed between those lines, and you've done a great job there as well, keeping your hips between the lines, and your left ear stays on that line as well. All right, so takeaway, not bad at all. Up to P3, which is left arm parallel with the ground. Again, starting to see some change of knee flex now, right? So you can see his left knee going a little lower, his right knee going a bit higher because of that change of flex. But the hips have stayed within the lines. And your hips have stayed between the lines, right? So they're not necessarily moving away from the target. What is starting to move away from the target is your upper body, right? So you can see your head from P2 to P3 now, your head is coming away from that circle, right? So we're starting to see some upper body movement, right, away from the target, some lateral movement away from the target. So Rocky gets up to the top, right? Nice and stable, right? So he's tilted, he's turned, he's extended, right? So what I'm seeing with you is I'm seeing left tilt, definitely, but I'm seeing your upper body too much over your right side, right? So you see how your head is now more towards your, your head started with your left ear next to that red line, and by the time you get to the top of the swing, your head's moved 4 inches to the right, right? So obviously your weight then, because of your upper body movement, your weight would have moved too much to the right, too much away from the target. One of the things that you're complaining about is fat shots. Unless you move your head a lot towards the target now, which even if you did, opens up a whole other can of worms, because then your eyes are moving too much. Right, so if your eyes are moving too much, that tells your brain that the ball's moving, so it's very difficult to hit something that's stable on the ground when you're telling your brain that that's actually moving. Does that make sense? So that's why we want a stable, not only for the mechanics of the golf swing to keep it more simple, but also to feed the right sort of information to your brain as well. Right, really nice sort of start of your downswing. One of the things that I've really gone into deep with how I see the swing and how I want to understand how these pros move is from the top to the start of the downswing. Right, so one of the things you find is the pros all stay pretty, there's always some exceptions, but they all stay pretty centered with regards to their body, right? The hips stay pretty centered, the head stays pretty centered, but there's a transfer of pressure from the back foot to the lead foot, right? And you can really see that there from the top of the swing, and even before the club starts coming down. Look, you can see how he's starting to push down under his lead foot, this foot, even before the club starts moving down, right? So that starts to slide the hips, get some lateral movement in the hips down to P4, down to P5 and P6, right? So then his hips, now the center of his hips have moved over here close to that front red line. So you've definitely got that in your movement. Look, so as you start down, there's definitely some pushing down under that lead foot, which is excellent, right? The hips start to slide again, which is great. You've got some good lag, right? You keep some really nice angles down to there, right? You've slid your hips, but you can see the different, and with regards to arms and hand structure through impact there, I think that's very good. If you're shooting 90 and you're getting into that position with your hand structure and your wrists, right, I think that's excellent. Right, if we take those lines away and you look at where he's at impact, right, and you look at where you are at impact, right, I think there's a lot of similarities there, mate. Right, left shoulder's higher, from shoulder to wrist, wrist to club. Left shoulder's higher, from shoulder to wrist, wrist to club. I think there's a lot of similarities there. I think you're doing a really good job there. The one thing I will say is from where we started with regards to try and get rid of those lines 1 second. With regards to where we started there with the head, you can see how the head moves off that line, starts to come back to it a little bit, but never really gets back to it. So you're kind of away kind of 2 or 3 inches at impact, whereas the the patterns of the pros is they're maybe moving back a fraction, but not that much, right? If you look at Rocky and with his head, and you look at where he is at the top with no sort of head movement to the right, then as he starts down, he actually moves to the left, right? So he gets his left ear past that line, And then through impact you can see his left ear is still on that line. But the big things I'm looking at here, mate, are, like we said, head movement, right? So your head's too far to the right. And also, if we look at right foot, how his heel is leading his toes, whereas you're number one, you've got a lot of your right foot still on the ground there, and you're just kind of spinning on the ball of your foot, right? And that, you know, that could very easily be from your head being too far back there. Definitely. And then as we come through, P7.5, again, really nice wrist structure here. Whoops. I really like the fact that you've kept that right wrist bent, really like that. But even there you can see how that right heel, if we get rid of those lines, you can see how that right heel never really gets in front of your toes. You look at where Rocky is at that point, you look at his heel, okay, his right heel's in front of his toes, right? Then he comes up and finishes. We want to feel as though the belt buckle's a little bit higher. Yeah, and then you come up through to a nice finish, belt buckle a little bit higher. So I think you got a lot of good stuff going on, mate. I mean, if you're going round and you're still shooting 90, you know, doing that sort of stuff, then, you know, maybe 2 or 3 changes will see you hitting the golf ball a lot better. Pretty much straight away, I think. Pretty much straight away. Good.